Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and it's time to glue your lips shut. It's time to be quiet because we're going into a quiet place. This is the Quiet Place episode here on Movie Goodness in honor of the release of the latest film in the franchise, the third film yet, not part three. It is the prequel, A Quiet Place Day One, which drops in theaters June the 28th, 2024. And since this is highly anticipated, at least in my mind, I wanted to go back and revisit the first two films in this franchise that, when this first film came out, what was it, 2018, never pictured a franchise out of it. Just thought it was a unique horror film, as opposed to the horror films that we've been getting, slasher or monster films and stuff like that, which is all good in their own right. But this is kind of a different take, something that plays on your senses. It's something that affects everybody. I mean, I don't care what your race, your belief system, your creed, whatever your sexuality, it doesn't matter. It all affects you. And this was so unique. And, you had some, I guess you could say, imitations to come out around the same time. I can't pinpoint exactly when and where these films fall as far as their releases. And I'm talking about Bird Box, where it kind of plays on your senses as well. That dropped on Netflix around this time. It was around the 2017, 2018 era. And, it starred Sandra Bullock. And it was a good film at the time. But if you ever go back and revisit Bird Box, it doesn't quite hold up. It's interesting. It was good from when it came out. It took the world by storm. It was once again a unique take on this genre. It struck at the right time. Whereas A Quiet Place still holds up to this day. Just an amazing piece of filmmaking. And in case you don't know what A Quiet Place is, A Quiet Place is a post-apocalyptic horror franchise centered on a series of films set in a world inhabited by blind extraterrestrial creatures with an acute sense of hearing. And I mean, very acute. This is, like a crackle, just a simple crackle will bring hordes of these creatures. It is frightening beyond belief. The first film in this franchise, A Quiet Place, which came out in 2018, is the first film in the series, which is followed by the sequel, A Quiet Place Part 2, which came out in 2020. And I was so mad when when the pandemic struck, because it struck on that weekend, basically like the week before or whatever, when things started shutting down. And it was my birthday week. And I was super excited because I was going to see A Quiet Place Part 2 on my birthday. It was the birthday gift that I had been waiting for. And everything shut down because of the pandemic. And I was so hot, on top of the fact that we were in a pandemic. So it was just a 1-2 punch for me. But both of those films were directed by John Krasinski, who also starred in one and a half of these films. And initially, I was kind of thrown off by that, because I'm like, wait, Jim from The Office is going to make a horror film, not only star in it, okay, that's one thing, but directed as well. I was really, really skeptical about that. But as we get into the film and break down these films, my skepticism was immediately thrown to the wayside. A spin-off prequel, which I mentioned before, A Quiet Place Day One, which is directed by Michael Skarnowski, is set to be released this Friday in theaters. Now, aside from that, there is a third and final sequel to this franchise, A Quiet Place Part 3. And John Krasinski will be returning as director. He is developing the screenplay, and they are in pre-production, and it is scheduled for a release next year in 2025. So be on the lookout for that. And this franchise also has a video game, A Quiet Place: The Road Ahead. And the video game is set within the same fictional universe that is in development at Stormline Games, and it is set to be released sometime this year. I haven't heard. I tried looking it up. I don't know an exact date, but it will be available on PlayStation 5, Xbox, on your iPhones, Android phone, and Windows. So it's going to be everywhere, and it's they make video games about everything. So why not A Quiet Place? And you know, if you ever played The Last of Us, there are sections in The Last of Us that you have to be quiet, creep around corners. The same format. So, and that's exciting to me. I love those games. And so if it's the same principle as that, where you have to be quiet, can't make a noise, can't step on anything or stuff like that, it's going to be fun. So be on the lookout for it. It's set to be released sometime this year. But back to the films, let's break down the production, how these films came to be, how this franchise was conceived. And it came from the minds of Scott Beck and Brian Woods, who wrote A Quiet Place based on a concept they conceived in college. When they first spoke with Platinum Dunes about the project, the two of them wanted Emily Blunt for the role of the mother. So Emily Blunt was always in mind for the role of the mother. And Platinum Dunes, who is owned by Michael Bay, people. Yes, Michael Bay is the steam engine behind A Quiet Place film franchise. And it is such a departure from your typical blow up everything, style over substance Michael Bayisms. But I love Michael Bay. I don't ever misconceive anything I say on this show for not liking Michael Bay. I love Michael Bay, even though some of his movies, well, most of his movies aren't that good. They are exciting, but as a filmmaker, he really does entertain. But his Platinum Dunes production company has given us a lot of horror films. And what made this so unique was the fact that this was kind of it wasn't this was an original horror film from that production studio. Platinum Dunes has given us the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street, which was horrible. The remake of Friday the 13th, which was also pretty bad. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, that was all right. The remake of that was pretty good. Well, decent. It was decent. But the point I'm getting at, it was a lot of remakes of old 80s horror films. And I guess that was the mission statement of that studio or that production company. And I'm not mad at it because I love 80s. Well, everything 80s, but I love 80s horror because that's what I grew up on. And he also produced the Ninja Turtle movies, those live action Mutant Ninja Turtles movies out of that as well. Like I said, he tried. But this was a part of his first look deal with Paramount Pictures, with his production studio. So he liked the script that Scott Beck and Brian Woods presented to him. He took it to Paramount Studios, and they bought it. And so Platinum Dunes, other producers, Andrew Farm, and Brian Fuller, they sent the screenplay to John Krasinski to play the father. Now, it is very interesting how this how this all came to be. All of the pieces were there in the beginning, but how it all came to be is nothing short of fate, I guess you could say. But they sent the script to him to play the father. His real life wife was in consideration for the mother, and the concept of the parents protecting their children appealed to John Krasinski. And so after reading the screenplay, he pitched his version of the story to Blunt, who suggested he also directed it. And so she put that bug in his ear, and he thought on it, slept on it, rolled over a few times, and said, you know what, maybe I should. And so when he co-wrote the script, he had Emily Blunt in mind for the role, even though she was already in consideration for the role, who didn't even know that she was in consideration before. But she was in consideration again, and she still didn't know because he didn't ask her to do it, because at the time she had just given birth to a child. She had just had a child and was working on another film right after that. And he was a little concerned, a little worried that she would either decline it or she would accept it just to support him. She wouldn't be wholeheartedly with it. You know what I'm saying? So he he's quoted to say, I just thought if she does this, she has to come in it on her own. And I feel that, because when you ask somebody to do something for you, you want them to do it willingly. You don't want to have to beg them, because if you beg them or make them do it, they're not going to give you 100%. And if they really want to do it, they're going to give you 100%. And that's what he wanted. So he was kind of trapped between a rock and a hard place there with his lovely wife. But Emily Blunt initially didn't want to be cast. Of course, she didn't want to be cast. But after reading her husband's version of the screenplay on a plane, she felt she needed to do it, as the story represented some of the deepest fears of not being able to protect her children. And that is, at its core, what A Quiet Place, at least the first film, well, both are set in. And it is frightening as a parent. I can definitely relate and sympathize with Emily Blunt in that regard. So after John Krasinski finished his screenplay, he presented it to Paramount to show him his vision of the film, and they were all on board. Now, Scott Beck and Brian Woods said that John Krasinski taking over the film as director wasn't about reshaping it in any massive way, and that he really protected our vision of the script. That's what both of the writers said. And so he really didn't change much of their original concept and ideas. He just put a little hot sauce on it, to liven up the story, I guess. Now, John Krasinski said that Beck and Wood's script differed from his in a bunch of little ways, but the heart was still theirs. They really had this thing that I wanted to be a part of. He focused on the idea of family being at the core of the story. So every scare has to be because you love this family. Every detail has to become a detail that says something about this family, not just to be cool or not just to be scary, but about the family. And so his contributions to the screenplay included the use of sign language, sand paths, the lights, the walk through the forest, and going to the store. All those elements were added by John Krasinski. Now, the idea of the sign language came when, before they started filming, a deaf actress who went on to play, I can't think of her name, but the daughter in this film, her name is Millicent Simmons, and she showed John ALS translation for a scene's dialogue, and he found her gestures to be, so very cinematic and more cinematic than actually speaking the dialogue. And he found that very interesting. And Emily Blunt contributed to the pre-production stage of the film as well. Most of the directing John Krasinski did with her role was off screen from the moment she accepted the project. So, it's not only they were on set, but you got to remember they're married. They have children together. So they basically was on set 24/7, those two. So they, from the moment he took on this project, she was a part of the project as well. And so Emily Blunt, of course, offered up some ideas, and the two of them, as a couple, as a partnership, they worked through the screenplay. They discussed the shots of the film before it went into production. I mean, every step of the way, they were in it together. By the time they got on the set, they had done all of the collaboration and all of the hard work. So once they started actually filming, it was a breeze. It was nothing. They've been down this road. And so they were off and running. The film was produced at a budget of $17 million, and it was shot in 36 days. Now, for those who are uninitiated, who don't know how filmmaking works and how these movies come together, that is bonkers for a big Hollywood film. Now, this is a $17 million budget. You can pretty much categorize it as an independent film. That's that's a small film in Hollywood. 17 million. Oh, that ain't nothing. Shot in 36 days. That is crazy. That's a little over a month to make a movie. These big superhero films, and I hate to compare them to these comic book films, but those take months, if not years. I mean, they've been shooting Captain America: A Brave New World for about a year and a half now. That movie, they still filming that film. It was supposed to come out like earlier this year or something, and they're still filming this movie. And so it just goes to show you, if you know the story, if you're locked in on what you want to do and how you want to do it, and you have all the right pieces in place, you can breeze through it. Now, that's easier said than done, of course. If that was the case, all of them, every film would do it. But this was just that gem. This was that rare film that actually did it, pulled it off, was quasi perfect. During filming of A Quiet Place, the crew avoided making noise on set. They really were bought in on the concept of this film, and they tried to emulate it while filming. They refrained. Well, it's impossible not to make noise on a film set, but as it was very minimal, and they were all locked in. They hired, of course, a ALS specialist to help teach sign language on the set, an interpreter to help out Millicent Simmons, who is actually deaf, on set. And the alien creatures were based off of animal echolocation, which is something like bats, what bats use, because bats can't see either. So they use echo, what I said, it's echolocation to find their way around places. And that's what these creatures were based on, being as though they couldn't see, but they had that acute sense of hearing. And so with all of that in place, we dive into the first film here in the Quiet Place franchise from the year 2018, A Quiet Place, a film that is revolved around a mother and a father who struggle to survive and raise their children in a post-apocalyptic world inhabited by blind extraterrestrial creatures with an acute sense of hearing. The film stars Emily Blunt, John Krasinski, who also directed and co-wrote this screenplay, and Noah Jupe, and Millicent Simmons. This is a horror film, but a family film, alien film. Uh, I mean, it's so many genres wrapped up in this film, and it works. This movie works, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't work as well as it does. We get the opening scene here when they're in the store and they're not making noise. You know, they're the family here. They're just picking up certain things. They're not talking, and you notice in that opening scene, the whole store has been ransacked. You know, everybody getting supplies and all this here, so they're getting as much as they can get or what's available to them. But there's one shelf or one aisle of that store that is untouched, and that was the aisle with all the potato chips, because potato chips make noise. They took everything else. I don't care. People starved to death, but the potato chips stayed put. And that was just an interesting and smart, genius detail to just throw into this film without without it actually kicking off. You know, this is the first 2-3 minutes of the movie, you know, and you like, that was smart, you know. You couldn't help but kind of like shake your head like, huh, that's smart, you know. So you have that, and the kids are being quiet. One of the kids, the youngest one, wanting to get this toy. It was a space shuttle, but it makes noise. And so they're like, no, you know, you can't have this toy, you know. So they're all walking. Everybody's speaking in sign language, you know, and they're walking back to their habitat. And as they're walking back, you realize that the boy has the toy. His brother gave him the toy, you know, because he saw his little brother upset, and you know he wanted to make him happy, so he gave him the toy. And as he's playing with it, he turns it on, and it starts making a noise, you know, a little spaceship noise, and whatever. And another interesting detail is they're walking on this sand path with no shoes on. They're, you know, so it won't make noise. You know, they made a path with the sand, and they're being quiet. And you know, the toy comes on, and the dad, he's out front, so he's running back. You know, he's trying to hurry up and get to his son. And I don't mean to laugh because this was brutal. This was brutal. He's almost there to get there to shut the thing off, and you hear this creature or something in the woods coming at the noise, just charging. So he's trying. John, the character of Lee, the father, he's running to get there. He's almost there, and just before mere feet away from grabbing his son, saving his son, the creature comes out, lunges out, and whoop, takes his son, kills him, right in front of him. And it was like, what are we about to? What tickets did we buy? Is this the movie? What is this? Oh my God! You killing a little kid? Cause this was the baby. He couldn't have been no more than 4 years old. In the movie, you know, and you're like, wow, they killed the 4-year-old in the first 5 minutes. And it's like, man, this is gonna be a brutal movie. But it wasn't like that, and it wasn't any gore and blood and guts all over the place and all this here. But you know, the mind, he let the mind do all the work, your imagination do the legwork. And from that point on, it was more of a family drama, so to speak, with these performances from John Krasinski, Emily Blunt, the two child actors here. It was awesome, man. It was awesome to watch this. The dynamic with the father and the daughter, you know, living with the guilt that she's the one. I know earlier I said the brother, but it was actually the daughter. It was Reagan. Is her name. She gave the toy to her little brother, and it's that guilt that she's living with, and the the way that John Krasinski plays this character of the father, you could tell there's resentment there, as if it was her fault, but that's his daughter, what can you say? What can you do? You can't get vengeance on your daughter. And it was an innocent thing. It was something so innocent, she's just trying to help her brother out, make her brother feel good, thought she was doing something out of love that led to his demise. And it's something that she had to cope with throughout this film. And to say that she couldn't verbally speak, and to display her emotions and uh, act her behind off in this film, and especially in the second one, but we'll get to that one in a couple of minutes. But act her behind off and hold her own against John Krasinski and Emily Blunt, and steal the movie. And it was a beautifully written character and arc to that character, as well as the father's arc. When we get to his final moments in this film, oh man, you want to talk about ripping your heart out. This movie, I don't even know how I'm gonna review this because this movie is so much more than just a horror film, more than just an alien invasion film, and hiding in the shadows, and all this other stuff, or survival film. It's not that. It is truly a family film, a family drama that you can get with, man. This was so beautifully done by John Krasinski. And just about a month or so ago, he released a film, If, that was in theaters. It was all right. I thought it was a pretty decent film. That was a straightforward family fantasy live action slash animation film. But it was cute. And the more I get away from it, I enjoyed it a little more, when I think back on it, because you can find elements of If in A Quiet Place. And not to say that it's kiddie or for the kids to watch, but the tone, I would say, and the way he addresses family. And you can really tell that John Krasinski is big on family. Through his films, he is big on family. And he knocks that out of the park. The scares, the jump scares in this film, because it is a horror film, they work. The reason the jump scares and the horror and the dread that you do feel when those moments happen is because it happens in moments. It's not cheap. They're earned. It isn't, drug out throughout the film. There are just moments that happen throughout the film that let you know that, okay, yeah, this is a feel-good family moment here, but let's not forget there are aliens that are just outside ready to rip you apart if you pass gas and it makes a noise. And so you have to constantly be on guard. And so it is a very, very tense film because of that, because you don't know when that creak or that step on a twig and hear it snap is going to cause cause this ripple effect. You know what I'm saying? It's like any little thing can happen. So it's like you tiptoeing through a minefield. And that's basically what this family and the rest of the world is doing. But that's another reason why this film works. The stakes weren't as high, but you felt the stakes. This is a small film. I mentioned before, this is a small budget horror film. And we focus on just these four characters. Well, 4.5 characters in this movie. And you still feel the weight of the entire planet. Even though we don't see nobody else, we don't hear from nobody else, it's just this family. And it still has worldwide stakes involved with this invasion. My negatives for a quiet place is nitpicks, but I have to address them nonetheless. Why? And I'm pretty sure everybody has asked this question. This is the one major flaw in this film, and it affects the second film as well. Why on God's green earth would you choose to conceive a child in the middle of an apocalypse when you're facing echolocation creatures who are waiting to hear you whisper, let alone a baby crying? So why would you even do that? Now, I'm not saying you can't have the boom shoom, people have needs, I understood that, but why did y'all choose to have a child at this moment now? I understand they were hurt from the loss of their son, their 4-year-old child. I get all that, but you weren't going to replace the baby. You weren't going to replace him, other than your head count. But it made no sense. My daughter, when we were watching it, she was like, why? And she just kept saying why throughout. Why, baby? I don't know. It's just to add tension, for the sake of the movie. But if this happened in real life, there is no way anybody would conceive a child. Now, things can happen, whether it was on purpose or not. Hey, that's to be debated. I strongly feel it was on purpose, because of the grief that they were feeling at the loss of their child. And so they felt they can fill that void with another child. But bad timing. And we talking about a baby here. Baby don't do anything but cry and make noise. And the only thing that entertain a baby is noise. So it was like, why? That's the one thing you don't want to have. And I know children are a blessing, because my two were a blessing. But if we were in the middle of an apocalypse, they wouldn't be here right now, because they're gonna get us all killed. But yeah, that's my major flaw. The other one, I felt that it just abruptly ended. Now, this was rectified with part 2, because it's basically the first half of another film, so that makes sense. But at the time, it was like, man, it just ended. It just stopped. It ended. No resolution to the threat or anything like that. But it was what it was. But those are my only big flaws. I really love the fact that we don't get an explanation of the creatures. We didn't spend half the movie, researching, oh, what planet did they go? They came from L17V48 on the other side of Saturn, and what all this. We didn't need all that. We didn't need all that. Who cares where they came from? They're here, in the words of Carol Ann. And so it doesn't matter. And I like that. We didn't even need it. It wasn't necessary to enjoy the film. It was a joy to watch. John Krasinski did an amazing job with everything that he did. Every way that he contributed to this movie, he knocked it out the park. His directing, his writing, he did the motion capture for the creatures. And everything. I mean, this was his movie, and he did an excellent job. Completely enjoyed it from beginning to end. That's why I was excited for part 2, because A Quiet Place Part 1 got a letter grade of an A. It was one of the best, quote unquote, horror films I've seen in decades. It's because it's so much more. It's so much more than just a horror film. But I loved it, man. I loved it. I still loved it. When I rewatched it, it was like watching it for the first time. It was completely quiet. You got to watch it quietly. That's the whole point, people. I will say this before we go into the review of part two. When I went to go see part one, me and my daughter, and we're in the theater. I think I told this story a couple of times, but hey, in case you're new to the show, and thank you for joining if you are, here we go again with it. We went to the theater, sat there. Everybody got the memo. The movie is called A Quiet Place. So everybody be quiet. So we were being quiet the first few minutes. Actually, it was right after the opening scene with the little boy being killed and all this here. And this couple come in late after the fact, and they sit in a row in front of me and my daughter, and they proceed to talk the entire movie. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't. If they were directly in front of me, I would have stopped. I would have kind of tapped them on the shoulder, like, "Look, please, could you please?" But they weren't. They was on the row ahead of me, but they were off like a few seats down, and I wasn't the only one aggravated. There a few people in there. They were like, you do that disgusted sigh, like, and everybody was doing it loud so they can hear. But once that got their attention, they got louder, as to say, I don't care. So at that point, I just had to tune. I had to tune them out, just like everybody else. I had to tune them out. It was one of the worst movie going experiences I ever had, because they were talking about the movie. That's the point that really killed me. They were talking because the boyfriend, or I don't know their relationship, don't care, but he saw the movie apparently. She didn't. So he was the director's commentary on the DVD. So everything that was going on, he was explaining to her everything. So after he finished explaining, and they couldn't hear or see what was actually going on the screen, she proceeds to ask, "Oh, well, what happened? What just happened? What did we miss? Oh, well, he's over here. He's doing." I'm like, "Are you kidding me right now?" You gotta be kidding me. It was. I'm telling y'all, it was amazing. But despite all that, I did enjoy the movie. I found a way to enjoy that movie. Oh man. But anywho's, the movie had a $17 million budget, like I said. Small. I mean minuscule. It went on to gross worldwide $340 million worldwide. I think it's safe to say it was a hit. It's a certified smash hit. Here's the problem. If you want to say it's a problem, when a movie is that big of a hit, money wise, the studio immediately will want to green light a sequel. Oh, we gotta go back to this well. This is a moneymaker. And there was a problem. In April of 2018, after the success of A Quiet Place, Paramount chairman and CAO announced that a sequel was in development. Now, John Krasinski said he had considered the first film a one-off. He did not write that movie or did not direct that movie and star in it and do all that he did to get it off the ground to make a franchise. He just wanted to make one film and go on about his business. Uncertain of finding similar success in a sequel. He didn't want to, I guess, tarnish the legacy, so to speak. So he initially told Paramount to seek another writer and director to the film. It was too much pressure. Because you had none. for the first one because it's not based on any IP. Nobody knows much about it or anything about it. There's no pressure. You just throwing that against the wall, see if it sticks. Now there's pressure because everybody that's seen the first one, there, and everybody enjoyed it. So now you have to live up to that. You have to at least get to that standard, if not above it. And so the first film, screenwriters Scott Beck and Brian Woods didn't return for the sequel either. Woods said they were not interested in a franchise approach to this film and that they would rather try to create original ideas and use their writing credits as an opportunity to push other projects. And so Scott Beck said instead of focusing on sequels per se, it's about investing back into the ecosystem of original ideas in a massive marketplace. And so at that point, it was kind of in limbo. And so John Krasinski, he went to Paramount. He did try some ideas. He pitched some ideas to Paramount, and they rejected the pitches, from other writers and directors that were considered too franchise oriented. And so he said he had this small idea, which was to make Millie, who is the daughter, the lead of the film, to make her the focal point of the film. Well, obviously it couldn't be his character because spoilers, his character died in the first film. So her character opened the door to all the themes that he was dealing with in that first film. And so the studio invited him to write the script based on his idea. John Krasinski decided to write and direct the film. Emily Blunt, Millie Simmons, and Noah Jupe reprised their roles from the first film. And we had two new additions to this cast with Cillian Murphy, or should I say Academy Award winner Cillian Murphy, and Djimon Hounsou. And production began on this film in June of 2019. It is none other than A Quiet Place Part 2. A film that was originally set to come out on my birthday, March the 20th, 2020. But the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, put the kibosh on that, and it was pushed back several times until it finally landed on the date, May the 28th, 2021. We got A Quiet Place Part 2. This go around, you have Emily Blunt, Millie Simmons, Noah Jupe, Cillian Murphy, and Djimon Hounsou joining the cast. John Krasinski wrote, directed, and co-produced this sequel to the big hit of 2018. And look, I was super anticipating this, but I was super nervous as well. For the simple fact, sequels, people, sequels are a scary thing because we have this overblown imagination and thoughts on how films should go, how they should play out, and all this other stuff. Oh man, they should take the idea, they should go here, they should do this, they should do that, or it could be just me that feel that way, but that sometimes you get caught in that trap. You set these certain expectations for these films, and this film was no different. And with the promotional material that was coming out around that time, it looked kind of wonky. Like, where are we going here? I mean, I remember when they released the first 10 minutes of the film or something like that as a clip online, and it was basically a prequel. The opening scene of this movie, well, it wasn't basically, it was a prequel. And so a prequel to the prequel that we're going to see today or tomorrow, whenever this comes out. And so it's but it was interesting. It was day one. It was when they arrived, when these alien creatures arrived, and man, that was crazy. That was super crazy, because you really saw how good of a director John Krasinski is how he moved the camera throughout that scene. There were a couple of scenes. Now, it wasn't one take, but it was filmed and edited so perfectly. It looked like one take for a good portion of that scene. When he's walking through the town after they're leaving the baseball game, and he gets in the truck, then he gets back out the truck and he follows this police officer, or goes to talk to this police officer and to see what was going on and all this here. You see in the background the look like a comic or whatever these creatures were riding on to get to Earth. We see that off in the distance, that trail in the sky, and it was just beautiful, beautiful. Then the chaos, when all the chaos broke out, the anarchy that broke out when these creatures showed up and started just murdering people. I mean, just tearing people apart. That's why, side note, that's why I'm so excited for A Quiet Place Day One. You know, to see it in a city, because this was a small town and it was bananas crazy bonkers. I can't imagine what it's going to look like in a big city like New York, where that film is set in, and all the chaos when those aliens show up. Oh man, I can't wait. But anywho's, yeah, it was crazy, this scene. You know, the scene with Emily Blunt driving the car and the way where he puts the camera at. And she's driving up the street, then the bus is out of control and it's coming towards her, so she has to hurry up, put it in reverse, and now the bus is right up on her as she's reversing. And as she's reversing, you see one of those creatures crawling out of the window of the bus, about to come onto the, oh my god, it was amazing. It was amazing. And now I will say that this film has a million times more action than the first film. This was a more Wrath of Khan type version of A Quiet Place franchise, but still kept his heart. It still had the same heart as the first film. It wasn't really embedded in the family aspect so much, but because of the loss of Lee, the father, John Krasinski's character, in the first film, but them dealing with that grief, because let's not forget, this is the next day. We're not a couple of years away, you know, a month, or you know what I'm saying? It's no time in between what took place in part one. Just the sunrise. That's the only thing that happened in between these two films, a sunrise. And so it is fresh, everything that took place. You know, the baby being born at the end of the first film, and the unique way to keep the baby quiet in that little soundproof chamber with the air, you know, the air tanks, so the baby can breathe, but it's soundproof, so when the baby's crying, nobody can hear it, and all this other good stuff. All that is innovative and unique, and that was explained away in the first film. I forgot to mention it when we were reviewing the first film, but the character of Lee, the father, is an engineer, so he can do all this. You know, this isn't you know, Minority Rig type stuff here, but this is he knows a little bit about a little bit, so all of that fits, all of that works. But yeah, they created this little chamber thing for the baby. Okay, that makes sense. Now they're on the move. You get set up with this character that we saw in the opening scene, that he's a friend of the family, portrayed by Cillian Murphy, and we find him later on. As he discovers this family who is trying to move on from where they're at. And a nice scene. I love Cillian Murphy in this movie. I love Cillian Murphy in anything. Cillian Murphy, another one of those actors, people, kills it, no pun intended, kills it in every movie that he's in. No, not even movie. Have you watched Peaky Blinders? The dude is amazing. I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody saw Oppenheimer by now. He deserved that Oscar. The dude is phenomenal, and he was phenomenal in this movie. It'll be interesting to see if he returns for part three. Because spoilers, he survives at the end of this film, so depends on where they take that third film. But as far as this film is concerned, man, this dude, I, I would say he stole the movie, but that that honor goes to Millie Simmons, and she didn't really steal it because, as I said in my pre-production notes for this film, she was the focal point. She was the lead of this film. Emily Blunt gets the main title because she's the biggest name on this film, but the star of this film is Millie Simmons. And man, what an amazing job on top of the amazing job that she did in the first film. Oh, it was more to her character in here. This is a character who has been through it. She has seen it. She witnessed her father sacrifice himself to save her and her the rest of her family. Dealing with the guilt of possibly being the cause of the death of her younger brother and all this here. And she grew up in that day, and once again, earned. It was earned. She didn't just all of a sudden become this Rambo killing machine. She earned where she got to this point, and I appreciated that. Emily Blunt, it took a kind of a back seat in this film, and I'm not gonna say she wasn't good, but she wasn't as good as the first film. But she wasn't given a lot in this version of the story. But I liked her. It was all right, but she wasn't as good as she was in the first film. German Hensu, who was only in this film, what, 10 minutes tops, but he did a good job for the little 10 minutes that he was in here. This story, they did have some things here that I was like, man, that I kind of, that dings it. That is not as good as the first one, but it's still a worthy sequel category. The character of Marcus, who is the brother here, he was kind of annoying to me in this film. Now, I enjoyed him for the majority of this film. Like the scene where he get his foot caught in that bear trap. Oh my God. I felt that was acting. Now, I don't know how they pulled that out of him. I don't know if somebody had a dog bite him or something. I don't know what it was, but he gave out this primal scream that was, I don't know, man. It gave me goosebumps. I mean, I was just shaking. I had more fear for him at that moment than any part with the aliens. It was so real. That primal scream that he gave. And I'm like, yep, I would imagine that's what you would sound like if you stepped on a bear trap. That seemed so real to me. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. But for the rest of the film, he was incapacitated. Of course, he couldn't do much because he only had one leg, basically. But he was just whining a lot. Now, he had his hero moment at the end, but it didn't feel earned to me. It just didn't feel earned to me. I get why they did it. I get the whole story of it all. It just that character wasn't. It didn't have the proper time to grow for me because of so much focus being thrown on the Reagan character, rightfully so, and the Emmett character played by Cillian Murphy. Really didn't have time for anybody else. So there's that. But that was kind of a downer. Didn't really like the mercenary things, those bandits on the pier. I didn't like that aspect of the film. I felt that was unnecessary. I didn't know why are they doing this. I mean, in the manner that they're doing it, it made no sense. Why are you sacrificing these innocent people on this pier to lure out these things? You weren't going to kill them, and then you're trapped on the pier because there's nowhere to run. You know, so it was a stupid plan that made no sense to me. I just didn't get their motivations, you know, and they don't speak, they don't say nothing. They just dare to murder people, you know. I mean, why did they get to this point? How did they get to this point? You know, I know human beings in times of stress and fear will do things out of character. I guess that's where they were going with it, but it made no sense, and it was kind of out of place in this film. Uh, Other than that, everything else I enjoyed. I really did. I enjoyed everything else in this film. Uh, like I said, there was more action in this movie. There were more kills in this movie because there was a lot more people to kill. To dealing with a few more people to rip apart for these aliens. But everything else worked. Loved the camera work, loved the score, loved the direction. The acting, for the most part, was up to par. Not as good as the first one, but good nonetheless. A Quiet Place Part 2, which was scheduled for release in 2020, but came out in 2021, gets a letter grade of a B+. Yeah, it was really good. It's a worthy sequel. I wish it was better, but hey, you can't win them all. But it's still a win, though. It's one of those movies. I will watch it again. It's one of those movies. If you're scanning the channels and it's on, I'll stop. I'll stop and peek in on it. You know, it keeps you interested, keeps you entertained, and I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it to the point I am anticipating this next one and the one that's going to come out next year, God spare, that we're going to get. But yes, people, A Quiet Place film franchise. There's a franchise out of this. That is crazy to me, but it's a worthy one. You know, it's a very good franchise. Even if you're not a quote unquote horror fan or an alien invasion movie fan, this is a good movie. These are good movies to watch. I think everybody can enjoy this because if you're not into blood and guts, this is for you. It doesn't have all the gore and all this here. You know, there's some intense scenes, some scenes that will kind of make you turn your head if you're a little squeamish, but nothing gory. And so I do recommend it for that reason. But I would like to know which one of these are your favorites, and are you looking forward to A Quiet Place Day 1, which stars Lupita Nyong'o, Joseph Quinn, and Jermaine Hensu reprising his role from the second film. But like I said, this is the prequel, in case you're confused. But yes, I am anticipating. I can't wait to watch it this weekend. But I would like to know your thoughts. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for this show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Don't forget about the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to movie goodness here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for our look into the Quiet Place franchise. Want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everyone. And until we speak again, be quiet and be blessed.